The grease smell clings to my hair and clothes as I push through the back door of the cafe into the alley, every muscle aching from the double shift. Past midnight and the city feels different at this hour, all harsh shadows and distant sirens, the kind of darkness that makes you walk faster without knowing why. I should take the main street, but my feet are killing me, and the alley cuts 10 minutes off my walk home, and I've done it 100 times before without incident. The dumpsters loom on either side, metal and brick closing in, my sneakers scuffing against broken asphalt. I'm thinking about my bed, about the tips folded in my pocket, about whether I remembered to pay the electric bill. Then I hear it. A scream, sharp and terrified, cutting through the night like broken glass. My body freezes. Every instinct screams to run the other way, to pretend I heard nothing, to get home and lock my door. But my feet move forward instead, toward the sound, toward the darkness deeper in the alley. I see them before they see me. 3 men, broad-shouldered and predatory, surrounding someone on the ground near the dumpster. A woman. She's fighting, struggling, her dress torn, dark hair wild around her face. One man has her arms pinned. Another is rifling through her bag. The third is just watching, laughing. The sound of that laugh makes something hot and furious explode in my chest. I don't think. Thinking would stop me. My hand closes around a metal pipe leaning against the wall, cold and heavy and solid. I charge. The shock on their faces would be funny if I wasn't so terrified. I swing the pipe at the nearest one. Feel it connect with his shoulder, hear him curse and stumble back. The woman scrambles away, gasping. The men recover fast, too fast, turning on me with ugly violence in their eyes. I swing again, wild and desperate, catching another across the arm. Pain explodes in my side as one of them shoves me against the wall. The pipe clatters from my grip. I kick out hard, feel my foot connect, hear a grunt of pain. Hands grab at me. I claw and bite and fight like something feral. One of them is bleeding from his face where I scratched him. He looks at me with pure murder. Then the woman is up. She has something in her hand, a rock, and she brings it down on his head. He drops. The other two exchange glances, some wordless calculation, and suddenly they're backing away, dragging their friend, disappearing into the shadows. Just like that. Gone. I slide down the wall, shaking so hard my teeth chatter. The woman crawls toward me, her face a mess of blood and swelling, and up close I see the diamonds at her throat, the designer label on her torn dress, the kind of jewelry that costs more than I make in a year. This wasn't some random mugging. I fumble for my phone, dial 911 with trembling fingers. Her hand shoots out, grips my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't!" she gasps. "Please! You can't trust them." Her eyes are wild with terror that goes deeper than the attack. "Take me somewhere safe, please." I stare at her, at this bleeding stranger begging me to make a choice that every rational part of my brain rejects. Sirens wail in the distance, getting closer. I make the choice anyway. Now please take a moment and subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from and what time is it. It is always fascinating to see where these stories get all around the world. Thank you. I help Sophia to her feet, and we stumble out of the alley toward the lit street. My arm around her waist, taking most of her weight, both of us checking over our shoulders every few steps like hunted animals. My apartment is only 6 blocks away, but it feels like miles. Every shadow a threat, every passing car a potential enemy. Sophia leans heavily against me, her breathing ragged and pained, and I keep us moving through sheer willpower because stopping means thinking, and thinking means realizing how insane this is. We make it to my building without incident, and I fumble with my keys, hands shaking so badly it takes 3 tries to get the door open. Eleanor is out, thank God, because I have no idea how to explain this. I guide Sophia to the bathroom, lower her onto the closed toilet seat, and start pulling out the first aid supplies I keep under the sink. The fluorescent light is merciless, showing every bruise blooming across her face, the split in her lip, the defensive wounds on her forearms where she tried to protect herself. I clean the blood away with gentle hands, my own cuts and bruises starting to throb now that the adrenaline is fading. She flinches but doesn't cry out, just watches me with eyes that hold too much knowledge, too much fear that goes deeper than tonight. When I press antiseptic to the worst cuts, she finally speaks, her voice rough and cultured, the accent of someone educated in expensive schools. "Sophia," she says, "my name is Sophia. Thank you for what you did." I tell her my name is Clara and ask if she wants me to take her to a hospital. She refuses immediately, almost violently, and when I mention police again, her hand grips my wrist hard enough to hurt. "No police," she whispers. "Please. You don't understand who those men work for." I look at her, really look at her, at the remains of her designer dress, and the diamond studs in her ears, and the way she holds herself even now, like someone accustomed to a very different life than mine. I ask who they work for, and she just shakes her head, tears finally spilling over. "Powerful people," she says. "I ran from my family's protection, thought I could disappear, start over somewhere they'd never find me. I was stupid." She tells me fragments between sobs, pieces of a story I can barely comprehend about arranged marriages and family obligations and a life where she's nothing but a pawn to be traded. The words sound like something from another century, but the terror in her voice is completely modern. I should tell her to leave, to call whoever her family is, to get her out of my apartment and my life, before whatever she's running from finds us both. Instead, I make tea with hands that won't stop trembling, help her to the couch, watch her curl into herself like a wounded animal. She falls asleep almost immediately, exhaustion and pain pulling her under. I position myself by the window with all the lights off, watching the street below, seeing threats in every shadow. My phone screen glows 2:47 a.m., and I think about my shift tomorrow, about the electric bill and my student loans, and my dream of saving enough to open my own bakery someday, all the ordinary concerns of my ordinary life. Everything feels fragile now, like I'm balanced on the edge of something that will shatter it all. A black car slides past below, moving too slowly, windows tinted dark. My heart stops. It circles the block, comes back, cruises past again. Someone is looking for something, looking for her. I check the locks on the door twice, grab the biggest knife from the kitchen, position myself where I can see both the door and Sophia on the couch. The knife feels heavy and useless in my hand, but I grip it anyway. Dawn cannot come fast enough, and when it does, I know it will not bring safety, only better visibility for whatever is coming. Morning light cuts through my bedroom window like an accusation, too bright and cheerful for the nightmare my life became in the span of 6 hours. I haven't slept, just sat by the window with the knife in my lap, watching the street until my eyes burned and the darkness finally surrendered to dawn. Sophia is still curled on the couch, her breathing deep and even, bruises standing out in stark relief against her pale skin. I'm about to check on her when I hear the key turn in the lock and Eleanor walks in, stops dead when she sees the stranger on our couch, her eyes going wide and then narrowing as they land on me. She jerks her head toward our bedroom and I follow, pulling the door almost closed behind us. "What the hell, Clara?" she hisses, keeping her voice low, but the anger vibrating through every syllable. "Who is that and why is there a bloody dress in our bathroom sink?" I explain in whispers, the words tumbling out too fast, about the alley and the attack and the men who weren't just muggers, and the terror in Sophia's eyes when I tried to call the police. Eleanor stares at me like I've lost my mind, and maybe I have. She says we need to call the police right now, that this is insane, that we cannot harbor some random woman who's clearly involved in something dangerous. I feel the same instinct screaming the same logic, but something stops me, the memory of Sophia's voice begging me not to trust them, the genuine fear that went soul deep. Eleanor's voice rises slightly, and I shush her frantically, aware that Sophia might hear. We argue in tight, furious whispers, Eleanor insisting this isn't our problem, and me unable to articulate why I can't just throw an injured, terrified woman back to whatever wolves are hunting her. The bedroom door opens and Sophia stands there swaying slightly, her face a mess of purple and black, one eye swollen nearly shut. "I'm sorry," she says, her cultured voice cracking. "I'll go. You're right, I've brought danger to your door and you don't deserve that." She moves toward the couch to gather her ruined dress, and I see her wince with every step, pain radiating from her despite her attempts to hide it. Something in me breaks or solidifies, I can't tell which. I tell her to stop, to sit down, that she's staying at least until she's healed enough to move without agony lancing through her. Eleanor makes a sound of disbelief and frustration, grabs her work bag, tells me this is a mistake and she wants no part of it. The door closes behind her with more force than necessary. Sophia sinks back onto the couch looking at me with gratitude and guilt warring in her expression. I call George at the café, tell him I'm sick, first time I've called out in 2 years and he's understanding, tells me to rest and feel better. The lie tastes bitter. I make breakfast because I need something to do with my hands, scrambled eggs and toast, simple and grounding. Sophia eats like she's starving, like she hasn't had a real meal in days, and I realize she probably hasn't. Between bites, she talks, carefully skirting around specifics but painting a picture I recognize. An arranged situation, she calls it. People who owned her life, who made decisions about her future without consulting her, who treated her like property to be traded for advantage. I know that feeling. Maybe not the same circumstances, but the bone-deep need to escape control, to claim your own choices. I ask about where she was trying to go, and she just shakes her head, says anywhere that wasn't there. The apartment feels too small suddenly, walls closing in, every sound from the hallway making my pulse spike. I suggest she shower, lend her some of my clothes. While water runs in the bathroom, I pick up her torn dress, examine the label inside. Not just designer, but custom-made, hand-stitched, the kind of garment that costs more than my monthly rent. Who is she really? What kind of family has this kind of money and this kind of danger wrapped together? The knock at the door stops my heart. I wasn't expecting anyone. Eleanor has her key. I move to the peephole, look through, and my breath catches. A man stands in the hallway, tall and powerful in a suit that probably costs more than my car, dark hair perfectly styled, and eyes that seem to see through the door straight into me. He knocks again, patient and certain, like he has all the time in the world and knows I'm on the other side. Behind me, the shower stops. My heart hammers against my ribs hard enough that I'm certain he can hear it through the door, each beat a countdown to something irrevocable. The man knocks a third time and calls out a name, not a question, but a statement of absolute certainty. Sophia. He knows she's here. I stand frozen between the door and the bathroom, where I can hear the water shutting off, paralyzed by indecision and the sudden understanding that everything is about to get infinitely worse. The bathroom door opens and Sophia emerges wearing my borrowed clothes, her wet hair dripping onto the faded sweatshirt that hangs too loose on her slender frame, and the color drains from her face so completely I think she might collapse. Her lips form one word without sound. Brother. The pieces slam together in my mind with sickening clarity, and I realize the danger I'm in just multiplied beyond anything I imagined, because the man outside isn't just looking for her, he's the one she ran from, the family she escaped, the power she's terrified of. His voice comes again through the door, deeper this time, controlled in a way that makes my skin prickle with warning. He introduces himself as Alexander Thornhill, says he knows his sister is inside, and he needs to confirm she's safe, nothing more. The tone is polite, almost gentle. But underneath runs something absolutely unyielding, immovable as stone and just as cold. I look at Sophia, who is shaking her head frantically, tears already streaming down her battered face, her whole body trembling with a fear that goes bone deep. Alexander continues speaking, and I realize he's not demanding entry, not threatening, just stating facts in that same terrifyingly calm voice. The men who attacked Sophia last night work for William Crawford, his enemy, and they're still hunting her. Every moment she stays in my apartment puts me directly in their crosshairs. They saw my face when I intervened. They know where I live. They're coming. My mind races through possibilities and finds nothing but dead ends because I'm caught between warring criminals and a terrified woman, and I have no idea which threat is worse. I approach the door slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me, and ask for identification because it's the only thing I can think to do. A business card slides under the door and I pick it up with shaking fingers. Thornhill Security Consulting. Professional letterhead, embossed logo, legitimate looking enough to be the perfect front for whatever he really does. Alexander's voice gentles slightly. Thanks me for protecting his sister. Promises that I won't be harmed, but we need to have a conversation, face to face, so he can ensure both our safety. Behind me, Sophia whispers desperately that he'll force her back into the life, into marriage to a man she despises, into being nothing but a pawn in his empire, a piece to be traded for advantage and alliance. I stand with my hand on the deadbolt. So far over my head I can't even see the surface anymore, knowing that opening this door changes everything, but also knowing that not opening it might get me killed anyway. Crawford's men are out there somewhere. This Alexander Thornhill is right here. At least I can see the threat in front of me. I take a breath that does nothing to steady my nerves and make a decision that will either save my life or end it. I open the door. Alexander Thornhill fills the doorway like a storm barely contained in human form, and my first thought, the one that hits before logic or fear can intervene, is that he's dangerously handsome in a way that makes me deeply uneasy. The dark suit is tailored so perfectly it might have been sewn directly onto his body, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean, powerful frame, and his eyes are like flint, cold and sharp, and capable of striking sparks that burn. A scar cuts through his left eyebrow, white against tanned skin, and it should make him look damaged, but instead it makes him look lethal. He looks past me immediately, his gaze finding Sophia with laser precision, and something in his expression cracks open for just a second. Relief, raw and powerful, and so human it catches me off guard. He steps inside without asking permission, without acknowledging that this is my home and I have not invited him, moving toward his sister with controlled urgency. Sophia backs away instinctively, pressing herself against the far wall, and the pain that flashes across his face is so naked and vulnerable that it startles me into seeing him as something other than a threat. He stops mid-step, holds up both hands in a gesture of peace, but his jaw is tight with frustration. Behind him another man enters, shorter but built like a boxer, suit equally expensive, and he closes the door with quiet finality before positioning himself directly in front of it. James Redmond, he says in introduction, his voice clipped and professional. Head of Security. The words confirm what I already suspected, and I realize with cold clarity that I'm locked in my own apartment with them, that the door might as well be a vault for all the good it will do me. My throat tightens, and I fight the urge to back away, because showing fear to predators seems like a catastrophically bad idea. Alexander turns his full attention to me for the first time, and the impact is physical, like walking into a wall I didn't see coming. He studies me with an intensity that makes me feel stripped down to bone and nerve, cataloging every detail, measuring me against some internal standard I don't understand. Thank you for protecting my sister, he says, and his voice is a dark rumble that seems to resonate in my chest. What's your name? It's not really a question despite the grammatical structure. Clara, I manage to answer, hating how my voice shakes, how small I sound in my own home. Clara Ashford. He nods once as if filing the information away in whatever mental database he maintains. Tell me exactly what happened last night, Miss Ashford. Every detail you remember. I recount it as precisely as I can, the alley and the screams, and the three men and the pipe I grabbed without thinking. watching his expression remain perfectly neutral, except for his jaw which tightens incrementally with each detail, controlled fury radiating from him in waves. James takes notes on his phone with quick, efficient movements. "Did you see their faces clearly?" Alexander asks when I finish. I nod. Two of them. The third kept his back to me mostly. Alexander and James exchange a glance loaded with meaning I can't interpret, but which sends ice down my spine, because I understand suddenly that I'm now a witness to something that could get me killed. Sophia finally speaks, her voice breaking through the tension. "Alexander, please just let me go. Let me live my own life. I'm begging you." The argument that erupts between them is rapid fire, siblings who know exactly which words will cut deepest, layered with years of history and resentment and love twisted into something painful. Alexander never raises his voice, but he radiates absolute authority, immovable and certain, while Sophia's defiance is desperate and crumbling. I stand helplessly between them, watching a family tear itself apart in my tiny living room and having no idea how to stop it or whether I even should. Finally, Alexander turns back to me, and his next words detonate my entire world. "Miss Ashford, by intervening last night, you put yourself directly on William Crawford's radar, and he doesn't leave witnesses breathing." Alexander explains to me in that same terrifyingly calm voice that by intervening last night, I put myself directly on William Crawford's radar, that his men will have seen my face clearly enough to identify me, and they'll come for me both to eliminate a witness and to draw Sophia out of hiding. "My apartment is no longer safe," he continues, his eyes never leaving mine. "Neither is my workplace, my daily routine, anywhere I'm known or can be predicted." The bottom drops out of my world, and I feel myself swaying slightly, gripping the back of the couch for support because this cannot be happening. This cannot be my life. I protest that I'm nobody, that they have no reason to target me specifically, that I'm just a waitress who happened to be in the wrong place. James speaks up from his position by the door, his voice professionally detached as he explains William Crawford's reputation for brutal thoroughness, how the man eliminates every potential threat no matter how minor, how he's built his empire on ensuring there are never any loose ends. Ever. The word hangs in the air like a blade. I look at Sophia, who won't meet my eyes, guilt written so clearly across her battered face that I can read it like a confession. And I realize she knew this would happen, knew that helping her would put me in danger, but was too desperate to warn me. Alexander continues speaking, and I force myself to focus on his words, even though my mind is screaming. "I have two choices," he tells me. "I can disappear on my own, leave the city tonight, abandon my entire life, and hope that Crawford never finds me. Or I can accept his protection, stay in a secure location until the threat is permanently eliminated." My mind reels trying to process what he's offering, what he's threatening, because witness protection from a mafia boss was not on my list of possible futures when I woke up yesterday morning. I served coffee and baked muffins yesterday. Now I'm discussing my potential murder with a man who looks like he's ordered deaths over breakfast. I ask what eliminating the threat means, needing to hear him say it, needing to understand exactly what I'm agreeing to. Alexander's smile is cold and sharp as his eyes. "Exactly what you think it means, Miss Ashford." I should be horrified, and part of me is. The part that was raised to believe in laws and justice and proper channels. But another part, the part that grabbed a metal pipe and fought three men without hesitation, understands that survival sometimes means accepting help from dangerous people. I ask about my life, my job, my roommate Eleanor, who has no idea what kind of danger I've brought to our doorstep. Alexander assures me that Eleanor will be safer if I'm not there. Promises to have someone watch her discreetly, says my boss will be told I had a family emergency. Everything managed, everything controlled, my entire existence rearranged with a few phone calls. I hate how helpless I feel, hate how completely my autonomy has been stripped away. I look around my small apartment at the life I built from absolutely nothing after aging out of foster care at 18. Every piece of furniture saved for, every small comfort earned. Walking away feels like dying, but staying might mean actually dying for real. I ask where he wants to take me, and he says one of his properties, secure and comfortable and guarded. A gilded cage, Sophia mutters bitterly from behind me, and Alexander ignores her completely. I realize I'm actually considering this, that the smart choice is obvious even if it terrifies me. Trust the powerful criminal who can protect me, or trust myself alone against an organization that wants me dead. Some choice. But every instinct I have screams not to put myself completely in his control, not to become another possession in his collection. I ask for time to think, needing space to process, and Alexander checks his watch with a gesture so casual it enrages me. "You have 10 minutes while I make some calls," he says. "Then we're leaving whether you're packed or not." He steps into the hallway with James. The door closes behind them, and I'm left alone with Sophia and a decision that will determine whether I live or die. Sophia apologizes the moment the door closes, tears streaming down her bruised face, her voice breaking as she says this is all her fault, and Clara should hate her, and she never meant for any of this to happen. Clara surprises herself by not hating her at all, just feeling bone-deep exhaustion settling into her muscles like lead, the kind of tired that comes from making impossible choices with no good options. She asks Sophia what Alexander will actually do with her, needing to understand the full scope of what they're walking into, and Sophia explains in a hollow voice about the arranged marriage to Marcus Castellano, son of an allied family, a union meant to strengthen Alexander's political position and secure a weapons supply route. She refuses to be traded like property, Sophia says with sudden fierce defiance, refuses to be a bargaining chip in her brother's empire. Clara understands that impulse viscerally, has spent her entire life fighting to belong to herself and no one else. She asks if Alexander would really force the marriage, and Sophia's silence stretches long enough to be its own answer, her eyes dropping to the floor. Clara makes a decision in that moment, one that feels both reckless and inevitable. She tells Sophia that if they're both going to this safe house, they face it together, they'll find a way out. They'll figure something out, because Clara didn't survive foster care and homelessness, and building a life from nothing just to become another man's prisoner now. Sophia looks at her with desperate hope blooming across her face, reaches out and grabs Clara's hand, squeezes it like a lifeline. Clara packs quickly, her hands still unsteady but functional, throwing clothes into her old duffel bag without bothering to fold them, grabbing her laptop and charger. The framed photo of her foster sister Maya from 8 years ago, before they lost touch, the small amount of emergency cash she keeps hidden in a hollowed-out book. Her whole life fits in one duffel bag, and the realization is profoundly depressing, makes her throat tight with emotions she refuses to name. Eleanor texts asking if everything is okay, and Clara lies smoothly, says she has to help a friend with a family emergency, will explain everything later, knowing later might never come. She looks around the apartment one more time, at the thrift store couch she reupholstered herself, and the kitchen where she practiced recipes, and the window where she watched the sunrise on her days off, trying to memorize it all. Alexander knocks once and enters without waiting for permission, sees her packed bag, and nods approval, and something in his eyes when he looks at her makes her breath catch in her chest. Not threatening exactly, something else. Curiosity, maybe, or reassessment, like she's not what he expected, and he's recalculating his assumptions. James brings the car around and Alexander instructs them to move quickly and efficiently. They take the service stairs instead of the elevator, emerge in the back alley where a black SUV waits with windows tinted so dark Clara can't see inside. James scans the street with professional paranoia before opening the back door, and Clara climbs in with Sophia beside her, Alexander taking the front passenger seat. The car pulls away from her building and Clara watches it disappear in the side mirror, watches her entire life shrink to a vanishing point. The drive takes them out of the city center toward the hills, the buildings getting sparser and more expensive as they climb. No one speaks, and the silence is heavy with tension and unasked questions. Clara studies the back of Alexander's head, the breadth of his shoulders filling the seat, the way James defers to him with the automatic respect of someone who has seen exactly what this man is capable of. This man controls life and death with phone calls and hand gestures, and she's now completely in his power, dependent on his protection, trapped in his world. The thought should terrify her more than it does, but maybe she's in shock, her emotions numbed by too many impossible things happening too fast. The SUV turns onto a private road and passes through a gate that opens automatically, some sensor recognizing the vehicle. The property that unfolds before them is massive. A modern fortress disguised as a luxury estate, all clean lines and strategic landscaping and security measures hidden in plain sight. Clara's stomach tightens into a knot. This is really happening and there's no turning back now. The house is stunning in a way that intimidates rather than welcomes. All glass and stone and clean architectural lines that speak of wealth so profound it doesn't need to announce itself. And staff appear and disappear with practiced efficiency that suggests they know exactly when to be invisible. Alexander leads us inside, and I can feel his absolute control in every detail. From the placement of the furniture to the way everyone moves around him like planets orbiting a sun, and I feel like I've stepped onto another planet where the rules I've always lived by no longer apply. He shows Sophia to her room first, opening a door on the second floor to reveal a space that looks like a luxury hotel suite, and she disappears inside without looking at him, without a word of thanks or acknowledgement, and the hurt that flashes across his face is so raw and unguarded that I almost look away before he masks it behind cold indifference. Then he turns to me and gestures for me to follow him down another hallway, and my room when we reach it is spacious and beautifully appointed with an attached bathroom that's larger than my entire bedroom at the apartment, windows overlooking manicured gardens that stretch toward distant tree lines. I note the heavy security bars hidden in the elegant window design, disguised but unmistakable once you know to look for them, and my stomach drops because this beautiful room is still a cage. Alexander stands in the doorway, and he's too large for the space somehow, his presence filling it completely, and he tells me in that controlled voice that I'm free to move around the house and grounds, but I cannot leave the property, pausing before adding that it's for my safety. The words are perfectly reasonable, but they feel like prison bars closing around me anyway. I nod because I don't trust my voice right now, don't trust what might come out if I open my mouth. He studies me again with that unnerving intensity that makes me feel like he's reading thoughts I haven't even formed yet, and he asks if I'm always so brave or so foolish, his head tilting slightly. I meet his eyes and force myself not to look away, saying that sometimes they're the same thing, and a ghost of a smile touches his mouth for just a second before vanishing. He tells me dinner is at 7 and I should rest, then leaves and closes the door behind him with a soft click that sounds too much like a lock engaging. I sit on the bed and finally allow myself to shake, my hands trembling as the reality crashes over me that I'm trapped in a Mafia boss's house because I helped the wrong person in an alley 36 hours ago. The urge to laugh or cry or scream fights for dominance inside my chest. I do none of those things. Instead, I unpack my meager belongings, hang my 4 outfits in a closet that could hold 50 times as much, shower in the enormous bathroom with its heated floors and rainfall showerhead, trying to process my new reality through the fog of unreality that keeps insisting this cannot be my life. Late afternoon sun streams through the windows, turning everything golden and deceptive. I explore the room more thoroughly and find the closet already stocked with clothes in my exact size, jeans and sweaters and dresses still bearing designer tags. That was fast, too fast, and the realization hits me that Alexander had this prepared before we even arrived, that he planned for my acceptance of his protection before I'd made the choice. The thought is deeply unsettling and raises the question of what else he's planned, what other decisions he's already made on my behalf. Dinner is surreal in the way nightmares feel when you're half awake, gourmet food served on fine china that probably costs more than my monthly rent, while tension crackles through the air like static electricity before a storm, and I can barely taste the perfectly prepared salmon because my throat is tight with anxiety and awareness. Alexander attempts conversation, asking me about myself in that controlled voice that suggests genuine curiosity, and I answer carefully, hyper aware that every word is being evaluated and filed away, revealing only the safest details about working at the cafe and my hope to open a bakery someday, something I've barely admitted to anyone because dreams feel dangerous when you've had so little. He listens with what seems like genuine interest that surprises me, his dark eyes focused entirely on my face like I'm the only person in the room, and he asks what kind of bakery, leaning forward slightly. I describe my vision, finding myself talking more freely than I intended about simple comfort food done well, cinnamon rolls and sourdough, and the kind of chocolate cake that tastes like childhood, a neighborhood place where people feel welcome. And for a moment, the conversation feels almost normal, like we're just two people getting to know each other over dinner. Then Sophia makes a cutting remark about Alexander's controlling nature extending to everyone around him eventually, her voice sharp with bitterness, and the illusion shatters completely. The argument that resumes is familiar and bitter. Years of resentment and love and hurt tangled together so tightly I can't tell where one emotion ends and another begins. And I eat silently and try to make myself invisible while they tear strips off each other with surgical precision. James catches my eye from his position near the wall and gives me a look that might be sympathy or warning or both. After dinner, Alexander retreats to his office with James following, and Sophia disappears upstairs without a word to anyone. And I'm left standing in the massive foyer wondering what I'm supposed to do with myself in this beautiful prison. I wander the house learning the layout with the instinct of someone who always needs to know the exits, and I find a library that takes my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling books on custom shelves, leather furniture that looks soft as butter, and a fireplace with logs already arranged. I gravitate toward it instinctively, trailing my fingers along book spines until I pull a worn copy of something classic from the shelf, sink into a chair that embraces me like a hug, and try to lose myself in fiction. Alexander finds me there an hour later, and I startle violently when he speaks from the doorway, my heart leaping into my throat. He apologizes for interrupting, says he needs to ask me more questions about the attack. And I steel myself and nod because I knew this was coming. He sits in the chair across from me, close enough that I can smell his cologne, something expensive and understated, and pulls out his phone to show me photos. I identify two of the attackers, their faces burned into my memory from the alley, and his expression darkens into something cold and lethal that makes my stomach drop. He makes a call immediately, low, rapid instructions in a language I don't recognize but that sounds harsh and unforgiving. And when he ends the call, he looks at me for a long moment that stretches and pulls like taffy. He thanks me again for protecting Sophia, his voice dropping lower, more intimate in the quiet library, and says most people would have walked away from that situation, would have pretended not to hear the screams or convinced themselves it wasn't their problem. I tell him I'm not most people, the words coming out steadier than I feel, and he agrees with something in his tone that makes my pulse quicken and skip, a note of approval or respect or something more dangerous that I can't quite name. He asks why I intervened, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, genuinely curious, and I struggle to articulate it because I've never had to explain this instinct before, this bone-deep inability to walk away from someone in danger. I just couldn't let it happen, I finally say, the words inadequate but true, and something shifts in his expression, a recognition that cuts through all the careful distance we've been maintaining. He understands that impulse, I realize with a jolt, operates by the same protective instinct on some fundamental level, even if his methods and the scope of his power are so vastly different from mine that we might as well be different species. The difference is, he's built an empire on that instinct, while I just stumbled through an alley with a metal pipe. We talk longer than necessary, the conversation drifting beyond the attack into more personal territory. And he asks about my life, my past, with the careful attention of someone who actually wants to know rather than someone just making conversation. I remain guarded, instinct screaming not to give this dangerous man ammunition, but I find myself sharing more than I intend, telling him about foster care and aging out of the system at 18 with nothing but a high school diploma and stubborn determination, about building my life from absolute zero with no safety net and no one to catch me if I fell. He listens like every word matters, like he's cataloging each detail and storing it somewhere important, and his focus is so complete that I feel naked under it, exposed in ways that have nothing to do with physical vulnerability. I ask about his scar before I can stop myself, the question foolish and far too personal, but he doesn't shut me down. Instead, he touches it unconsciously, a habit maybe, and tells me it was from a rival when he was younger, before he learned to be faster and more ruthless, before he understood that mercy was a luxury that could get you killed. The admission of vulnerability surprises me, cracks the controlled facade just enough that I glimpse the man beneath the monster. And I don't know what to do with that glimpse except hold it carefully like broken glass. The air between us shifts, charges with something neither of us acknowledges aloud, an awareness that hums just below the surface of our careful words. He stands abruptly as if he feels it too, and doesn't trust himself around it. Says I should rest, because tomorrow we'll discuss next steps and strategy. He leaves me in the library, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, and I sit in the thick silence with my heart racing and my hands trembling slightly. I'm attracted to him, and the realization crashes over me like cold water, horrifying and undeniable. He's a criminal who orders deaths with phone calls, my captor who holds all the power, the man who literally controls whether I live or die. And I'm sitting here feeling my stomach flip when he looks at me a certain way. But when his eyes meet mine, I feel seen in a way I've never experienced, like he's looking past all my defenses straight into the core of who I am. And part of me wants to run, while another part wants to lean closer to that dark intensity and find out what happens if I stop fighting this pull. I barely sleep that night, because every time I close my eyes, I see Alexander's face, the intensity in his dark gaze when he looked at me in the library, and I toss in the unfamiliar bed, wrestling with feelings I have no business having, while the house settles around me with creaks and whispers that might be nothing or might be everything. Morning comes gray and uncertain through the massive windows, and I force myself out of bed and into the shower, where I stand underwater hot enough to punish, trying to wash away the confusion and fear and unwanted attraction that's tangled itself around my ribs like barbed wire. I dress in my own clothes, refusing to touch the mysterious wardrobe that appeared in my closet, needing something familiar against my skin, even if it's just a worn sweater and jeans. Downstairs, I find the kitchen empty, except for staff who look at me with carefully neutral expressions and offer breakfast with the kind of deference that makes me uncomfortable, and I accept coffee and toast because I need something to do with my hands. Sophia appears looking hollow and exhausted, sits across from me at the enormous island without speaking, and we share a moment of understanding in the silence. Two women trapped in Alexander's world for completely different reasons, but trapped nonetheless. She finally asks if I meant what I said about facing this together, her voice small and uncertain, like she's afraid of the answer, and I tell her yes, even though I have no idea how to make good on that promise. Alexander enters before we can say more, already dressed in another perfectly tailored suit, looking like he slept soundly while I wrestled demons, and his eyes go to me immediately with a focus that makes my stomach flip despite everything I told myself upstairs. He informs us that James confirmed Crawford's men are actively searching for both of us, that there was an incident at my apartment building last night where two men tried to gain access, that Eleanor is fine but shaken and has been moved to a hotel under assumed name with security watching her. My blood runs cold at how close the danger came, how real this nightmare actually is, and I realize with sickening clarity that Alexander wasn't exaggerating the threat. He continues in that calm, authoritative voice, explaining that he's taking direct action against Crawford today, that this situation will be resolved within 48 hours one way or another, and the implicit violence in those words should repel me. But instead, I feel a savage sort of gratitude that someone this powerful and dangerous is standing between me and the men who want me dead. Sophia argues that this is exactly what Crawford wants, to draw Alexander into open conflict, that she should just turn herself over and end this. But Alexander's response is swift and absolute, telling her she will do no such thing in a tone that brooks no argument. The siblings stare at each other across the kitchen island, wills clashing like swords, and I watch the man who commands an empire and the woman who refuses to be commanded lock in a battle neither can win. Alexander finally turns to me and asks if I'll walk with him in the garden, says he needs to discuss security protocols, and it's not really a request, but I nod anyway because what choice do I have? The garden is beautiful in a controlled way that reminds me everything here bends to Alexander's will. All geometric hedges and carefully placed stone pathways that wind through beds of flowers I can't name, and we walk in silence for a moment while I wait for him to speak and try not to notice how aware I am of his presence beside me, the way his hand occasionally brushes near mine as we navigate the narrow path. He finally stops near a fountain, turns to face me with an expression I can't read, and tells me he owes me an explanation about Sophia, about why she ran and what she's running from, because I deserve to understand the situation I've been pulled into. I tell him he doesn't owe me anything except maybe a way out of this mess, but he shakes his head and continues anyway, explaining that their parents died when Sophia was 12, that he raised her while building his empire, that every decision he's made has been to protect her and secure their future. The arranged marriage isn't about control, he insists with something raw in his voice. It's about alliances that will keep her safe in a world where their enemies multiply daily, where showing weakness means inviting destruction. I understand his logic even as I hate it, see the impossible position he's in, loving his sister enough to cage her while she suffocates under his protection. I ask him if he's considered that keeping her safe, but miserable isn't really keeping her at all, and his jaw tightens, that barely controlled fury rising to the surface again. He asks what I would have him do, let her marry for love and watch her become a target, a liability that his enemies exploit, and I don't have an answer because I'm a waitress who knows nothing about mafia politics and family empires built on blood and fear. We stand in tense silence broken only by the fountain's steady burble, and then his phone rings with a tone that makes his entire body go rigid. He answers, listens, and I watch his expression transform into something cold and lethal that makes my stomach drop. He ends the call, looks at me with eyes gone flat and dangerous, tells me Crawford just made his move, that there's been an attack on one of Alexander's businesses and 3 of his men are dead. My blood turns to ice because I understand this is about Sophia, about me, about the witness who can identify Crawford's men and the sister who's a bargaining chip in whatever war these men are fighting. Alexander's control is fracturing at the edges, violence simmering just beneath his expensive suit, and he tells me we need to get back inside now, that the estate's security is being increased, that I'm not to leave the house under any circumstances. We walk back quickly, his hand finding the small of my back in a gesture that's both protective and possessive. And I should object, but instead I feel safer under that touch than I have since this nightmare began. Inside, James meets us with more news, his face grim as he reports that Crawford has put a price on Sophia's return and my death, that half the underworld is now actively hunting us for the bounty. Alexander's response is swift and decisive, orders flowing in rapid succession as he mobilizes his entire organization, and I watch him transform fully into the man who controls an empire, ruthless and brilliant and absolutely terrifying. He turns to me one more time before disappearing into